Welcome back to How to Craft Fair. This is episode number 26 in the Craft Fair booth review series, where I analyze a real craft fair booth submitted by one of my subscribers, and I'm going to break this review down into 10 different segments. Along the way, I'll point out things that the vendor is doing well and should continue to do, and then I'll also identify some areas where there's room for improvement. During the review, keep your craft fair booth in mind so that you can apply these tips in order to take your setup to the next level. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, and so for today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at Naomi's booth, and her business name is Greetings from Nay. And she makes primarily greeting cards, but she has recently expanded her booth out to include other stationery items. So she's based out of New York, very exciting for the channel, another new state checked off. And for today's review, the things that we're going to be focusing on is, first of all, she typically does a 6-foot booth. So we're going to be focusing on a smaller layout and how to expand out the items that she's showcasing. Okay, so adding the stationery to the greeting cards and doing that while avoiding overcrowding at the booth. Okay, so like I said, we have a 6-foot table, very, very easy to get overcrowded in a space like that. So let's go ahead and take a look at the booth. Okay, so here we go. Indoor setup with the 6-foot table. The first thing that we're going to talk about is displays. So let's work our way from left to right. I'll zoom in a little bit so we can see it better. All right, and the first thing that you're going to notice is this large display back here for the greeting cards. We have 4 levels, 1, 2, 3, 4. And in total, it holds about 20 different greeting card designs. All right, so pretty good bang for the buck here as far as like how much space is being taken up on the table. You're able to showcase a lot of items without taking up too much space at the table. So I like this display a lot. In front of that, we have a wire basket, and that contains sets of cards. All right, so it looks like holiday themed cards. And then when we come to the center, we see a couple of smaller, either plastic or acrylic containers here that look like they're holding like sticky notes, either sticky notes or just like index cards, something like that, but smaller packs. Then behind that, we have the wicker basket, and that has larger stationery items in it. And then finally on the right hand side, we have a pretty large spinning, rotating display. And there's 4 sides, 3 designs on each side, so we have basically 12 slots here, and it's really nice because it adds a little bit of like variety in the height of the displays, and it's taking up very, very little room at the table. So I like it a lot. I think it's a very nice display, and the one thing I would say about it is that probably some underutilization here at the top of it. Probably would like to see some kind of a sign attached to the top of this display, and that would make good use of that space. Okay, so there's kind of like free space here that's not being used, so just something to consider. But all in all, when we back out and take a look at all the displays, I really like it. There's good variety within the displays, good height, some different height variations, and you've kind of carved out like the center section here for you to be present as the vendor, because the shoppers like that. The shoppers really like to see the vendor at the booth. So it's good that you kind of have this middle section a little bit more open, and that way you can connect with the shoppers a little bit better. So yeah, when we're breaking down the displays here, I really like them. All of them are serving a really nice purpose. There's just a good look to them. It's very clean. Nothing is very distracting. So yeah, good job with your displays. Okay, now let's talk about pricing. So pricing at the booth is laid out pretty clearly. So either there's going to be a sticker on the item itself. So for example, if we zoom in here on these sets that we mentioned earlier, there's a set of 6 and they're $20. Okay, so each one has its own little sticker. So we see instances like that where there's stickers on particular items. And then over here, we see the same thing, these stickers on the bottom right. And then we also have some signage. All right, so there's a few of these $5 signs located throughout the booth. And then we also have a little bit more elaborate signage, such as this right here, where it kind of describes the item and lets the shopper know that it can be customized. And then it also has the price on it. And then down here, we have the mystery card packs. You get 5 cards for $18, and it kind of gives you a breakdown of what types of cards are in the packs. So really good. I think the signage is great as far as the pricing goes, and the stickers are nice too when there's a little bit more like explanation needed as opposed to just like a straight up $5 card. So, and then lastly, on this sign, we have it broken down one more time, so there's some good basically reinforcement of the pricing of some of these items. So that's good to see. Like just for example, the single greeting cards, you have the $5 thing here, but then you also are backing it up right here. So you're doing a good job of making it nice and obvious for the shoppers. Really not a whole lot to comment on it. I think your signs, like your pricing signs, look nice. The one thing that I would say about it is that you have like an orange marker here, like an orange chalk marker, and sometimes it looks really vibrant. Like right here, it looks really good. It's very, very like bright, and the contrast is nice against the black. But then in other instances, like right here and then up here, it's not quite as vibrant, so I don't know if the marker was kind of running dry or, what happened there, but it would be nice just to get them all like really popping as much as they do over here. You can kind of see it on this sign as well. So mystery isn't quite as vibrant as some of these sections are over here. Okay. So that's just like the one thing I would say, maybe a little bit of room for improvement there to make them really, really vibrant all the way across the board. It's just going to be nice for the shoppers because they're going to be able to see that from a greater distance, and that is always a good thing. Okay, now let's talk about signage. So, we covered the pricing signs, but now I'm going to dive into this sign right here, and we'll zoom in again so we can kind of break it down into some detail. First thing you're going to see right off the bat is all the blue, okay? And the blue is tied into the theme. So I like that. I really, really like it when vendors will basically inject their branding into everything, their signage, their price tags, all that stuff. So to see that right off the bat is great. Then you've kind of doubled down and you have the business logo at the very top. So again, hammering home that branding is never a bad thing. Really like it. We talked about this middle section here where there's some of the items are broken down into more detail with the pricing. So that's covered. And then we also have payment options on this sign. So it says scan to pay, we got Cash App, and we got Venmo. Besides that, the QR codes, there's also this bottom section that says also accepted, cash, credit card, and then probably something else down here, but it's, blocked off. So when you have a 6-foot booth, it's really, really important that you combine elements, and have multi-purpose elements at your booth, okay? Because you're trying to save as much space as possible. So the fact that this sign is like a stand-up vertical sign that's saving some room on the table, and it's multi-purpose. It's hitting your branding, like your marketing. It's hitting your pricing. It's hitting the payment options. So there's a lot of different things covered on this one sign. So I wanted to point this one out in particular because I really, really like it. Now, the one sign that I don't see at your booth that I probably would like to somewhere is for some way for people to connect with you online. Now, you kind of have it down here. We'll talk about this in marketing. You've got your website posted here, but you actually have, if you haven't checked her out yet, Nay has a pretty nice following on Instagram. So she's got a nice following going. And, that's something that you want to have shown at your in-person booth as well. So you might be able to pick up some followers during the event. So just keep that in mind, consider it, think of ways that you can do that. So with that being said, let's move into marketing. Now, marketing at the booth, again, it's already covered on the sign. Okay, so that's great. The branding colors are kind of interjected in. So we have a lot of the blue kind of splashing in different places. Down here on these card packs, I liked seeing these stickers have that shade of blue as well. So I really enjoyed seeing that. Now, let's come down and take a look at the table runner. Now, the table runner, front and center, it has the big logo on it. And it's good to, again, double down on it. So we see it up here and then we see it down here. Okay. So that's great. Now, this font and script that's on the runner, I like what you have on here, like, literally what it says: stationery, greeting cards, and more. And then your website. If you have a .com website, you guys, and you've put all that time, energy, and money into getting a .com website and building it out, put it out there. Definitely have it somewhere at your booth so that you can keep pushing that. So it's good to see it. But with these two scripts or fonts, I would consider making them bolder if you make another table runner at some point, okay? Or if you make like a banner or whatever, consider making this a bit bolder, because as we kind of back up, the blue on the blue, it's not really a super bold font to begin with. And with the blue on the blue, it doesn't pop nearly as well as it could, especially with the wrinkles in the table runner. We'll talk about that later, how to get those out. But yeah, like I said, it's one of those things where, you have good things on here, but you want them to be legible from a pretty good distance. All right, continuing on with the marketing theme, one thing that's really nice at the booth is on the left side here, she has an email sign-up sheet, so an email list. And what's really cool about it is that actually at the top, it says sign up for our mailing list and receive a free bookmark. So she actually kind of has like a giveaway associated with the mailing list. And as you can see from the list, it's pretty much filled up. So obviously it was working. That's always great to see. That is huge for your marketing. Don't strictly rely on social media. Continue to build up those contact lists, those email contact lists, you guys, because it's so important, because they're guaranteed contacts. When you send out an email to 100 people, 100 people get it. So very, very unlike social media. So keep working on this. I think this is great. I also like that it's blue, right? I mean, we just keep hammering that theme, and it's good to see that. So very creative. I like what you've done with the bookmarks, and just keep doing what you're doing. It's fantastic. The only thing I'll say about it on the very top is that you should consider having what's called a disclosure. And basically it lets people know how you're going to use their email address. Okay. So you can basically just say, I'll email you once a month my monthly newsletter or something like that. This never really gets called to question, but technically it's something that you should be doing just to let people know how you're going to be using their email address. So just consider like adding that to the top of the form. It doesn't have to be big, you can keep it like a smaller font. But yeah, it's just kind of people, they have a little bit more peace of mind when they see that, so it'll probably help you even get like a few more email signups, just, people having that peace of mind, knowing that you'll be responsible with their email address. Now, finally, I want to wrap up marketing by saying I don't see business cards at the booth, and there's a pretty nice spot right here where a business card holder would be pretty nice. So if you don't already have business cards, keep doing what you're doing with your theme and inject that into your business cards. I'd probably make them two-sided and just have like a nice clean look on the front. And then on the back, I would put a QR code that goes to your .com website. Okay, so drive everything through here. And hopefully that'll generate sales, that'll generate people coming to visit you at shows and following you on social media, all that stuff. So you want the .com to be the driver and have those business cards out so that people can connect with you even after the event. And when you make sales at the show, of course, just remember to go ahead and drop some business cards in their shopping bags, again, to increase the chances of them connecting with you on social media or your website, all those places. All right, so now let's talk about vertical space. So with a 6-foot booth, there's not like a whole lot to cover, unlike a full 10 by 10 and all that. But with the displays that are out here, I do like the vertical space because we have some pretty good height coming up off the table on the left side here. Then we have very good height on the right side over here. And again, could be even better with, maybe some kind of sign or just some sort of utilization with the top of this display. We have like a nice ebb and flow of height. And that's what you want to do. You want to create like an interesting dynamic of height at the booth. You don't want it to be like one straight line all the way across because honestly, it's kind of boring. People walk by booths and they see that and it doesn't really like have an interesting effect to it. There's not different levels to look at. It's just kind of like one straight line boop, all the way across. So having different variations is nice. And it's also functional too. Like I said before, with carving out a space where you can be as a vendor that makes you present towards the shoppers. And it gives you, from your perspective, a nice like lookout, from behind the booth. So not a whole lot to comment on with the vertical space. So just keep doing what you're doing. A lot of times when I talk about this particular segment of the review, I'll talk about items that are just laid down on the table and usually discourage vendors from doing it. But in this situation, when you have a 6-foot table, your options are very, very limited. Okay, so you need to basically utilize all the space that you've got. So 6-foot tables, definitely a lot more lenient with things being laid down on the table, especially when you have a display behind, like on the back part of the table. So you want to basically create levels. You want to create levels vertically, like with height at your booth. And then you also want to create levels as far as depth, like, near on the near end of the table, working your way backwards. And that's what you've done here. So when you look at the back end of the table, there's all the height. Okay, so you have the big displays back here, you have the big sign back here, the wicker basket, and then you have this big display over here. Then you kind of have this middle level where there's these bigger chalk signs, and then over here, that's where we see the wire basket. So that's kind of like that middle section. And then we have the low stuff at the front. So you've done a really nice job of creating tiers, okay? Tiers of depth and tiers of height. And that's exactly what you want to be doing. So excellent job. No critiques on this one, no tips, just really keep doing what you're doing. Okay, now let's talk about colors, contrast, and texture. So let's talk about the branding for a second. The two prominent colors of branding are this like powder blue, sky blue, and then you have like the beige and the tan. Really, really nice job of acquiring things that mesh with the theme really well. For instance, we talked about these blue stickers. Then you have the blue sign-up sheet. Even the beige tablecloth is like the exact same shade as what's in your logo itself. So a lot of times we'll see kind of in the ballpark color combinations where they're close, but they're not quite matching. And like sometimes it doesn't look horrible, but sometimes it just looks like too many different, like 50 Shades of Gray, right? I mean, it's like it's just like too many variations of one color. So the fact that you've pretty much hit them spot on, right on the head, is fantastic because we just see the two colors over and over, all over the booth. So really, really nice job getting everything to match and look unified. As I said before, if you introduce the business cards, keep that going, keep that train rolling. And even if you expand your booth out to like a 10 by 10, I know that you do like mostly the 6-foot booths, but if you were to expand out, just remember to keep doing that. And that's going to keep your booth looking consistent, really, no matter what you're presenting. That's the beauty of it, is you get a lot more freedom with what you can create and sell as a maker when all of the supporting elements of your booth are unified. So you don't necessarily have to worry about your theme being consistent with your products. It's basically just the entire look of your booth that's doing all that work for you. And it gives you more freedom as a creator to make the things that you want, even if it's not just greeting cards or just stationery. So keep that in mind as you maybe consider expanding out down the road. But yeah, as far as the colors, contrast, and texture, a lot of what I typically will talk about is trying to have vendors steer clear of like repeating patterns. So checkered tablecloths, like plaid or flannel looks all over the booth, that can kind of be distracting. And, you want your booth presentation to look nice, of course, and you want it to maybe like reflect the holiday that we're approaching, or maybe the theme of the event that you're participating in. But you always just want to be sure that if you do those things, it's not at the sacrifice of the attention that could be on your items. So basically, in other words, you don't want your supporting elements like your tablecloth and your runner, you don't want those to steal the attention and the show away from your items. Okay, so at the end of the day, you're there to present your items, but if you kind of go too much and you go overboard, it's detrimental, and you're really like kind of shooting yourself in the foot a little bit. So the fact that we have solid colors all over the booth is great. No textures to worry about, no clashing, of different textures or anything like that. In fact, there's very little texture at the booth, which is perfectly fine. Really, the only place that we see like patterns or, shapes repeating is this wire basket right here, and then this wicker looking basket back here. Between the two, I'm more of a fan of this one, just because I think it goes with these colors and it kind of looks like cozy, and warm. This one has a little bit of, I don't want to say a colder look, but it just doesn't have that level of cozy and warm and inviting that the other one does. Also, if you take a look at this one with the repeating like small squares, check out the top of this card right here where it says Merry, and then it has, a couple of presents. Now down below, we know that it says like Xmas, but it is like harder to see the design through this wire basket, right? So if anything, what I would consider doing is maybe having a little bit of a larger version of something like this where it's see-through plastic or acrylic, whatever, and getting a little bit of a bigger version of it for these items, these sets right here, because it would be nice just to be able to see through it, even all the way down to the bottom, to see the full design of the cards. Take a look at this display right here. This is kind of what I'm talking about, where basically almost half the card is being covered up at each level, but you're able to see the full design all the way around for every single design. So these acrylic elements can be kind of nice because it's just really subtle, and it ensures that 100% of the focus is going to be on the product, the item, as opposed to trying to visually fight through a display in order to see an item. But as far as colors, contrast, and texture, I think that's really about it. Not a whole lot to critique on, which is great, of course. A lot of good decisions being made, especially with your color combination. Again, I want to circle back to that and give you props. It's just really, really nice. I don't know if we've really even seen a booth yet that kind of has like this cream beige type of color with the blue, but this color combination is really, really fantastic. All right, so now let's dive into strength of theme. So the strength of the theme at the booth, is a strength in and of itself. Again, we started off with the greeting cards. The greeting cards are still definitely the star of the show, basically. And, probably at this point, 80 to 90% of the booth is still greeting cards, okay? But you're starting to mix in these little elements right here where, there is a little bit of something different being introduced. So if somebody was walking by this table, they could glance at it for a second and basically understand the theme. And that's exactly what you want to do at a craft fair. You don't want to make it so that you're basically throwing every idea at the wall to seeing what sticks. You want to have at least some kind of identity at your booth, some kind of home base identity where it's what basically keeps the booth grounded. And yeah, you can experiment a little bit, but make sure that that's basically the minority at the booth. And then, the rest of the booth is the main subject matter. Because again, shoppers are walking by. Sometimes they're not even really paying attention. They're more so just kind of browsing at the show. So basically, if you can have your booth shouting out to them and saying, hey, this is the place for this is the place for that, that's what you want to do. You want to make it crystal clear for the shoppers whose attention span might not be the greatest at the show. So to kind of keep it short and sweet with strength of theme, you're doing fantastic. As I said before, if you start to kind of expand your booth out and say you do like an 8-foot table, or say you even go outside to a 10 by 10 spot, just basically keep doing what you're doing and expand that out. I don't really think you need to change a whole lot. And I know that you were concerned about the overcrowding at the booth, and I don't think that's a situation here. I think that you've kept it really balanced with making sure that the booth looks full, but then also making sure that each of these areas and items has its own breathing space. So that's really important. And especially when you start getting down to smaller booths, like an 8-foot table, a 6-foot table, there's a temptation to basically try to cram it, because there's a realization there where as a vendor, you're like, well, dang, I only have 6 feet to work with. I want to try to get as much out there as possible. But if you start to go overboard with it, there's no breathability between your displays and your items and your signage. And it's very easy to make it so clustered that it's hard to focus on. It actually gets difficult to focus on it as a shopper. So again, I think that you've struck that nice balance and found that nice balance here between getting a lot out there. There's some good variety and there's a lot of items out here, but it's still very, very presentable and tidy. All right, now let's talk about accessibility. So I'll talk about a couple of different things with accessibility, such as literally the safety of shoppers getting close to the booth, being around it. Is anything going to fall on them? Are they going to trip over anything? Any kind of safety hazards? And then other accessibility things that I'll talk about is how close do people want to get to the booth? Is the booth tidy? Is the appearance nice? Is it, inviting in a general sense? And then also, how good of a job are you doing with attracting people to the booth? Okay, so making it accessible and making people want to access your booth. So let's start with the simple one. Now, this is a 6-foot table, all right? There's really not going to be too many things that we're going to be worried about with safety hazards. Typically, you'll see that with larger booths, the 10 by 10s, even the 10 by 20s, where you might have like electrical cords running. You might have different tent weights and canopy weights that you're going to be worried about. With these 6-foot table indoor spots, there's really not a whole lot. One of the things that we can look for is the tablecloth. Is it rolled up on the floor? Is it a tripping hazard? And no, obviously not. It looks fantastic. The table runner is coming down close to the floor, which is exactly what you want. You want it to be maybe like an inch or two above the floor. And then the tablecloth is you've done a good job of making sure that it's like contoured in so that it's not kind of fanned out and blown out where somebody could maybe catch their foot on it. So that looks good too. So as far as like the safety around the booth, it's perfectly fine. It's great. Now the tidiness, again, we kind of touched on this earlier, but if we take a closer look at some detailed things, if we look at the back here, I don't see any like soda cups. I don't see any snacks laying around. No, lunch or crumbs from eating or anything like that. So those are the kind of things that you want to be conscious of throughout the day. And it's perfectly fine to have a snack and a drink, but if you can kind of keep it like under the table somewhere, that's even better, because then it's just out of sight, out of mind. The shoppers don't see it at all, and it doesn't affect that tidiness factor at the booth at all. And then finally, let's talk about how well you're doing with drawing people in from a distance. Your signs are pretty good, okay? So we talked about the color combination. I think that is great because you've chosen really bright colors against that black background, and that looks really good. You've done a really good job of writing legibly and large on your signs too, okay? So using the entire size of the sign. You'd be surprised if you haven't seen a lot of these booth reviews, you'd be surprised like the number of vendors who just simply don't use like the entire sign. You have it out there, it's already taking up table space. You might as well write super big and take up the entire size of the sign. So good job with that. And these are the examples that I'm talking about where you are able to draw people in from a pretty good distance, because people are going to be able to see these things from far away, okay, from 10, 15, maybe even 20 feet away. So good job with all that. Accessibility is definitely a strength of the booth. So we talked about, the strength of theme, the marketing, now accessibility are all really, really, really strong elements of the booth. So again, not a whole lot to offer as far as, advice and whatnot. Basically, it's just keep doing what you're doing. Okay, now let's talk about general use of space. So kind of covered this already, so I'll do a quick recap here. With the 6-foot table, you have to find balance. That's probably the most important thing that you should focus on when you have a 6-foot table is, yes, try to find ways where you can get a lot of product out there. Like for example, this display right here, she's able to put 12 different types of greeting cards out there, and it's taking up literally less than a foot of width, okay? Maybe 1 foot of width. So this is a really, really nice investment of space because she's able to get a lot out there without sacrificing a lot on the table. So those are the kind of things that you want to think about when you are trying to save space. Also, we'll touch again on the sign. This sign covers literally like 4 different elements. So think about ways that you can use signage or displays in 2, 3, 4 different ways. And that is going to buy you a lot of room on your 6-foot tables. So really, it's just being conscious of how can I make the most out of this small space, and start thinking like a little bit outside of the box, things that you can do to combine elements. And I think before you know it, you'll be in good shape. But I mean, yeah, take notes from Nay, I guess. I mean, she's doing a really good job of putting a lot out there, but it still looks like open. It still looks just airy and inviting. When a booth gets to a certain point, it feels cramped that it is literally uninviting. It's a turnoff, so just again, try to find that balance. And I think that's the most important thing with the 6-foot table. So great job with your general use of space. Okay, and finally, the last segment is the eye test. And the eye test is the 2 or 3 seconds that somebody's walking by your booth, and what are you doing as a vendor to get them to stop and check out your work. So really, really good eye test at this booth. The 6-foot tables are hard, and I think it's kind of deceiving. I think a lot of people, especially vendors who do indoor events, will start off with either a 6 or an 8-foot table and kind of go from there, and just because that is what people start with doesn't mean that's what's easiest. It's very, very difficult to present on a 6-foot table because you're faced with so many difficult decisions that people with like 10 by 10s, they have the luxury of space and they don't need to make a lot of difficult decisions of, oh, how do I multi-purpose stuff? And, what can I save and what isn't going to make it on the table? Like, they don't have to worry about decisions like that. So even though a lot of vendors will start with 6-foot tables, like as they kind of get into craft fairs, it doesn't mean it's easy. So really good job of drawing people in with, first of all, I would say your theme. Your theme is very just eye-catching. It's all interwoven all throughout the booth. Okay, so we see like the tan or the beige and then the blue just mixed in everywhere. And that's so important in trying to catch people's eyes. So the more that you can do that, the better. For example, we see a couple of these stickers that are put on the sets of items. That could be, one more way that you can introduce the theme. So maybe just roll with that sky blue and make the sky blue the sticker on the sets. So we see them here and then we also see them down here. Okay. So those could be possible upgrades. Whatever you put up here, maybe it's like a business sign, or maybe it's just a pricing sign like for this. See if you can, again, roll the theme into that. So just keep doing all that you can to, again, inject the theme into all those supporting elements. But yeah, very attractive booth. I think you're doing a lot really well. I'm going to kind of just do a really quick rundown of the good and then, the possible improvements. So the things that I saw that I really liked in the booth is the blue and the cream theme. It's very, very nice, eye-catching, warm, inviting. The displays are tasteful. So they're not like quote unquote loud or noisy, where basically the displays kind of start to take the attention away from the items. The displays are neutral colors or natural colors, either way. And they're just doing a good job of kind of hanging out in the background and propping up the items. And that's exactly what you want the displays to do. So I wanted to make a point to mention that. And the booth is not overcrowded. So we have talked about the breathing space at the booth. That is another strength. Strength of theme. So staying within that stationery world, the greeting cards, the stationery items like the Post-it notes, the notepads, all that looks fantastic together, and you're basically staying within that lane. You're exploring a bit in there, which is good, but you've kind of stuck in there and haven't thrown any curveballs that would like throw shoppers for a loop. So good job with your strength of theme. The free bookmark on the email sign-up sheet is very cool. I like that. It's very creative. It's kind of like a two birds with one stone situation where, you're giving the shopper basically a service, with your email signups, and you're also providing them with a product that they can remember you by. So I like it. It's very creative and it's a great way to spark those email signups. So great job with that. And I like that you offer sets as well. So not just individual greeting cards, but if we take a look over here, there's like the seasonal sets. And that's always great because a lot of times people, especially around that time of year, they want the sets. They're going to buy like in bulk so that they can send out Christmas cards to their whole family and friends and all that. So, if you can sell one card, well, what the hell? I mean, it's better to sell like a pack of 10 or a pack of 5, right? So great job at least offering that option to get yourself some occasional big purchases at the booth. All right, now let's mention a couple of things that, maybe you could think about working on or consider improving to take the booth to the next level. So I wanted to talk about the wrinkles in the runner. Now, what you can do is, once it gets wrinkled, you can try a couple of different things. You can basically like hang it over a door in your bathroom when you take a shower, and maybe the steam will kind of just, relax it a bit. Some runners can be ironed and some can't, like depending on like the print that's on them and other things. If you do, maybe just like lay a towel down over it and kind of like protect that print so you don't literally iron off or damage the print. So that can be an option. But once you have it so that there's not a lot of wrinkles in it, I would actually recommend getting a mailer tube. So it's like a poster tube that you would get like in a mailer store, like a UPS store. And they're just like a cardboard tube that people will send posters in. But it's kind of nice because if you roll your runner up instead of folding it and then just put it in that tube, not only are you going to keep all the wrinkles out of it, but you're also going to give it a really nice protective case around it so that it doesn't get rips or stains or any of that type of stuff, you know. So these custom runners, a lot of times they're not cheap. I mean, they're, 75, maybe $100, for these bigger ones, and depending on the thickness and the quality and stuff. So it's an investment, protect it, and, get yourself like a $5 mailer. And, not only will it look more presentable just without the wrinkles, but then it'll also be protected for you as a long-term purchase. So think about that. And one other thing with the runner that I mentioned before is the blue on blue text on the runner. So I don't mind the blue on the blue, but I just think that it would look better if it was more bold. Okay, so nothing you can really do about it this time. But again, if you were to get like a banner made or another runner made in the future, just something to consider. Also, utilize the top of this display here. This feels like the one kind of like missed opportunity, I guess, at the booth where, you had some space to work with, but you didn't end up putting anything out there. So that is definitely like an opportunity for you to experiment with and have some fun with. Okay, and then one more time on the small $5 signs, the intensity of the orange isn't as strong as it is in other sections. Okay, so whatever you can do to make that pop a little bit better, I think that's just going to help like the accessibility and being able to see everything from like a greater distance. So, Nay, I really appreciate you sending in your booth. You had a really, really nice picture here to work with. Nay actually sent in 5 photos, but honestly, like this one was like so good that we really didn't have to veer off of it. Be sure to check out Nay on her .com website for sure, and then give her a follow on Instagram. I know that the vendors are pretty good, the viewers and the vendors are pretty good about following each other when there's a booth review. So, I hope you get some, good action out of the booth review. But fun fact, you guys, this is actually my second time recording this booth review. Kind of hate to admit this, but it's kind of funny. So what the hell? But the other night I recorded this booth review, which I don't know, like I recorded like 45 or 50 minutes of audio and video. And I went to edit it today. And when I opened up the file to edit it, I noticed that I had my mic on mute the entire time. So I literally just recorded an entire booth review on mute. So this is round 2. I hope it was even better than the one that you'll never get to see or hear. But anyways, I just want to thank everybody for watching, and all the vendors, all the viewers, even the organizers that are starting to watch the channel. I really, really appreciate it. And this was the 26th booth review. So if you want to check out all the other booth reviews, click on this playlist above. And again, thank you all so much for watching.